Continue, continue. There's no future for the people of Europe other than in union.
Décision de ce premier exécutif européen, c'est là une des transformations essentielles.
Others became famous for the ideas that were actually his. Just a former cognac dealer in a plain suit, a strategist, a negotiator. The man who united Europe without ever holding elected seat, persuading leaders who rarely agreed everything. From the shadows he shaped decisions that would change the course of Europe. In the darkest years of the 20th century, John Monnet built the blueprint for a Europe that could stand together and stay together. This is the story of John Monnet, the quiet architect of European unity. John Monnet's early life. At just 16, Monnet left for London to represent the family cognac business. This was followed by extended stays in Canada and across the United States, experiences that exposed him to the integrated, dynamic markets of the New World, a stark contrast to the rigid, protectionist systems of old Europe. Watching commerce flow freely across the US-Canada border without friction, Monnet became convinced prosperity required open, cooperative systems. Borders, he saw, were not natural barriers. They were political choices and costly ones. The power of trust. Deals were not just about numbers. They were about trust between people. This became Monnet's lifelong operating principle. Every diplomatic venture he would later undertake, from wartime alliances to the birth of the EU, was built on personal relationships, patient persuasion, and earned credibility. Monnet's rise to influence. With German forces closing in on Paris during World War I, Monnet boarded a train to Bordeaux, where the French government had fled, and walked in to see Prime Minister René Viviani. Imagine a young man directly approaching the Prime Minister to convince him that France had no real plan for victory, and that only urgent cooperation with Great Britain could win the war. Viviani listened, it worked, and that single act opened every door that followed, all the way to Deputy Secretary General of the League of Nations.
World War II had ended. Jean Monnet was appointed as head of General Planning Commission in France, tasked with rebuilding the French economy. Post-war France was desperate for coal and steel located in Germany's Ruhr and Saar deposits. But if they occupied it directly, this would lead to long-term conflicts between Germany and France because Germany saw the occupancy by France as a national humiliation. So Jean Monnet thought of something else. He pursued his vision of a united European Union and first drafted its plan in complete secrecy, consulting only a tiny circle of aides. Even Foreign Minister of France, Robert Schuman, received it within 48 hours notice before the announcement to prevent leaks and political sabotage. On May 9, 1950, Schuman announced the plan, naming it after himself, but the architecture was entirely Monnet's. France would share control of its own steel with Germany under a single neutral high authority. While convincing the nations, Monnet personally lobbied West Germany's Adenauer, who embraced it as rehabilitation and a way to make Germany comfortable with the rest of Europe, and soon Italy, Belgium, Netherlands and Luxembourg also followed. He used bilateral trust building, which he had learned in his early days in the West, and he went one leader at a time until 6 nations signed the ECSC treaty in 1951. But after Jean Monnet's greatest success followed his greatest failure, the European Defence Community 1954. Monnet's bold next step, a fully integrated European army under a joint command, no national armies, just one European defence force. He saw it as the natural military parallel to the ECS's economic integration and a cornerstone of his United States of Europe. Through his diplomacy, he was able to convince the US President and all participating nations in the Union, all except one, his own country, France. Yes, the France National Assembly rejected this proposal by majority vote on August 30, 1954. So, By this, we can conclude that greatness is never complete. One leader, when he is successful in one aspect, can drastically fail in another aspect. For example, here Jean Monnet succeeded in economic integration of Europe through the European Coal and Steel Community and the Treaty of Rome, which bound 6 European nations into a shared economic community, the direct ancestor of today's European Union. But he fell short in the military integration. The EDC's collapse in 1954 revealed the hard ceiling of elite-driven integration. We could bind economies, but armies belong to the nations in a way that no technocratic argument can easily dissolve. Thank you.